What's up? It's your boy Carcino here, and let's get into it. We're going to discuss the top 5 greatest NBA teams of all times. So there'll be no misconception, there's no bias here. We're going to tell it to you straight so that you will know who were the top and the best basketball players ever. And I think as a team and as a unit, there's a lot of teams that made the list and a lot of teams that didn't. And let's look at teams that didn't make it the list that a lot of you might assume might be on there. The 1992 Chicago Bulls, that team was a great team, did not make the list. So a lot of people might include them on their list. You know, you had the 64-65 Boston Celtics. You remember Havlicek stole the ball, that team that had Bill Russell on there. Yeah, that team didn't make the top 5 list, though it was a great team. And let's not forget Philly, you know with Wilt Chamberlain, the 67 team, was it 67-68? That team, then you had the 69-70 Knicks, so really in the 70s, like some people, there's other guys, like what about my Doc led with Moses Malone and the Sixers with Doc on there? I'm like, that was a good team, but I wouldn't say that they were one of the greatest teams of all time. So that's why I never put them like in that category. But let's go through the top 5 and then y'all tell me what you think. At number 5, we have the 1995-1996 Chicago Bulls. The Chicago Bulls that year, who won a record 72 wins and 10 losses, tore through the entire NBA that season. And it shocked a lot of people coming out the gate. It didn't surprise me one bit because of the fact that I knew what they were capable of once they signed Dennis Rodman. People underestimate Rodman's value to a team. He has the highest winning percentage, even higher than Michael Jordan, of any player in the history of the NBA. Let me repeat that. Dennis Rodman, a guy you had to at least play more than 7 years of basketball to qualify, has the highest winning percentage of any player in the history of the NBA. Now, you talk about impressive, that is very impressive. Everywhere Dennis Rodman goes, he ups the team by 30 plus wins. He makes your team better. The San Antonio Spurs, the Detroit Pistons, he made that team better the moment he was inserted. He's a bolt of energy. There's never been an athlete like him in a very long time. And his greatness was basically his weakness. He couldn't find a middle ground to keep him sane because he was just so good at what he did on the court physically. As far as being a defensive stopper, he made people want to play defense. People were getting jobs like Hot Rod Williams. All these guys were getting jobs. Basically, they wanted them to be defenders. Guys who couldn't shoot that well were Jason Williams, and all these guys were getting jobs. So, I mean, when you look at it all together, they had Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen on the team. You had Ron Harper, Tony Kukoc, and they needed a missing piece. They needed a power forward, somebody who can go in there and battle and get the rebounds and not look to want to score. That's what they were looking for. So when you look at the team as like, okay, let's look at what we need to get done here as far as, you know, the schedule or whatever. Like, what we need to get done. So, they tore through the league. They were the last, like, remaining core team left. Like, they were at their peak. And this was like the last run of the Chicago Bulls, because everybody was at, like, their peak. Like, this is it. So 95, 96, they needed Dennis Rodman. Losing Horace was a big thing for them, and they lost to the Orlando Magic because they didn't have a power forward who can guard Horace Grant. You get the best power forward in the NBA when you get Dennis Rodman. Best defender, rebound. He could pass. He could do anything you needed Dennis to do. He could do it. But that team played because a lot of people are going to be upset Bulls ain't number one. That team, the Chicago Bulls, they played some of the weakest basketball teams in the league due to expansion draft, due to the fact that the league had changed. You know, players were moving around, free agency was more expanded, so now you don't have to stay with a team that long. That was the beginning of it becoming to what it is right now, where you don't see teams stay together longer than 2-3 years. You know, back then it was common that a team kept their core and they stayed together for many years and they developed, and then you had a winning team. You know, you had the right pieces on the court. Here you don't have. You got a year to get stuff together. Next thing you know, the guy's out. He's out the door. If they win a championship, they might win one, and then that's it, because they finna split the team up. They just bought it. So that's why that 96 team was like men against boys, in other words. Number 4, the number 4 team of all time, I say we got to go with the 1987 Los Angeles Lakers. Showtime. The Showtime Lakers. Magic Johnson, you got Kareem, you got Michael Cooper, you got Worthy. You know, this was it. Byron Scott. This was Showtime basketball. And when they played the 87 Lakers, they ran the court no matter where they were at. They became more dangerous as a team because Magic Johnson, for the first time in his career, worked on his jump shot. And he started to hit it. He spent all summer working on his shot and getting a shot where he's comfortable. And it take him 3 hours to get it set up. But once he shoot it, it was net. Magic would sit there an hour and get it set up. But when he fired, them threes was dropping, going straight through. And when Magic was on, he was on. I mean, he wasn't a great shooter, but he was a great scorer, and he can manage a game. It wasn't just the passes. It was the fact that the team all expected the ball in certain situations, and the offense was just, they ran a fast break better than anybody I've ever seen do it on the court. Even Kareem was running a fast break with him. The team was unbelievable. I mean, just completely unbelievable. And for the rest of the NBA, it was just like, you got to catch up to this team. It's going to be hard to stop this team and force them in a half court. They could beat you in a half court. The 87 Lakers team was so dominant. They took the NBA by storm. Michael Cooper out there hitting them threes. They had every aspect of the game covered. Defensively, they were sharp. They were on it. They were getting the most steals, and they could turn anything to a long distance fast break. They were the first team ever in NBA history. As soon as the ball was stolen, they had a guy that would sprint down the court because the ball is flying down there. You cannot sit still and go to sleep on the 87 Lakers. That was probably, I would say, one of the greatest teams of the Lakers. Probably. Until we go to number 3. The 1972, 71-72 Los Angeles Lakers. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. The 33 straight win team. That team was incredible. We talking Gail Goodrich. Because, see, Elgin Baylor went down that year. People don't remember that. Elgin Baylor, as great of a scorer he was, his legs and stuff was giving out on him due to his knee injuries and all that stuff. So he just got sick. Like, starting the season off, he was sucking, and he just retired. He just went on to retire because the Lakers like, look, we don't want to have to cut you. You are legendary. So we just need you to go ahead and retire. Go ahead and retire. Be a Laker for life. And he did it. And what they did is they brought in Jim McMillan. Jim McMillan was scoring 18 points, hitting the boards. He was ready to play. Then you got Happy, too, out there grabbing boards. So these guys was out there working. Then you got Wilt grabbing like 20 boards a game. So you got Gail Goodrich and Jerry West both scoring like averaging 25 points a game. Plus Jerry West was averaging about 10 assists. I'm like, this team tore through the NBA when the NBA was at its core strength. They were tearing everybody apart. So a lot of people could say this was the best team ever assembled. But it didn't have the flash that the 87 Lakers had. So a lot of people would say, hey, 87 Lakers. That was showtime. It was lights, camera, action. This team got the job done. You were beat. There was nothing you could do about it. You couldn't stop Jerry West. You couldn't stop Goodrich. You couldn't stop Will. They had it covered. You ain't need to shoot threes. See, this is back where you needed to shoot threes. They didn't need it. They was cool. They dominated the paint. They dominated the range, out the distance. If you wanted to do that, Jerry West will shoot you out the gym. He's the logo of the NBA. For a reason. They don't need to change it. Jerry West, he redefined what basketball is all about. Remember Michael Jordan said if he wanted to come back to play somebody, it would probably be Jerry West, because he always wanted to know how good he was if he was to go up against somebody like Jerry West. He always wanted to find out, because Jerry West was bad. He was something else. And that brings us to the number 2 best team in the NBA history. The 1985-1986 Boston Celtics. Bird, McHale, Parrish, DJ. So you thinking about this team here. This team here had every aspect of basketball covered, and from the 3-point range all the way to the paint, they had it covered, and it was in perfection. They ran a fast break. It wasn't like Los Angeles, but they ran it. It didn't look that smooth, but they ran it. But the smoothest guy on the court was Larry Bird. You knew Larry Bird's game. You knew what Larry was going to do. You knew what Larry was going to say. Bird, you talking about his vision on the court, passing, assists, rebounds, and I'm hearing people saying LeBron James is better than Larry Bird. That's because they never saw Larry play. But LeBron has athletic-wise
Bird would have took that away. Bird knows how to compete at the highest level, and LeBron definitely couldn't outshoot Larry. He couldn't outpost Larry. He couldn't outpass Larry, even though he's a great passer too. Like, rebounds, Larry. Larry would have boxed him out. He wouldn't be able to do anything but get frustrated. I mean, but as far as teams defensively, they the one perfected the zone defense against the Showtime Lakers to force, Magic Johnson to have to learn how to shoot, because he was going to be open and he was going to have to hit that jump shot in order to beat him. And they put Magic in that position, and it helped them win the championship that year because Magic was terrible shooting, and they just exposed that to the world in the finals. So I'm going to go along with and take the at number 2. It's got to be the 1986 team of Boston. And that brings us to the number 1 team in the history of the NBA. The 1989 Detroit Pistons. Now, a lot of people are going to say, oh, you just saying that because you're a Piston fan. I'm a Piston fan because they was the best team in NBA history. I mean, you have to think about it. This was the first team in NBA history that rebelled against the NBA and won the NBA title. This is not a team the NBA coveted. This is not the team that they chose to want to represent the league. After being completely screwed over by the league, they decided to rebel. And when they did so, they went ahead and wore Raiders gear. An NBA team wearing a pro football team's gear and apparel. Oakland Raiders had sent them all gears. They were the Oakland Raiders of the NBA. You know the Oakland Raiders, what they did, right? They sued the NFL and won. Yeah. So they were like the Raiders. Just win, baby. Winning ugly. Doing what they do. And this team was the greatest professional basketball team ever. What is so underrated about them is stupid people always say they just beat people up. Man, Detroit just cheat. They beat people up and that's how they win. Well, you can't just beat people up and win basketball games. What people didn't understand until you played them is they were efficient. Something that these teams know nothing about. They're disciplined. Completely disciplined basketball team. That was predicated on not outscoring you, but to stop you from scoring. To make you mentally defeat yourself and quit. There's people talking about some, man, I ain't scared of them. Detroit hit us, I'm going to hit them right back. They're not even thinking about playing basketball. And then you look at the lineup. Look at their lineup. They had James Buddha Edwards that they picked up in '89. He was a key factor that we would have beat the Lakers. It wouldn't even went that far if we had Buddha Edwards in there. You had Mark Aguirre, already should be Hall of Fame right now, score. They're coming over from the Dallas Mavericks, and that was the key ingredient. We had to get rid of Adrian Dantley. Adrian Dantley was a cancer to the team. He was a great player. He brought discipline, but you could not advance with Adrian Dantley. His attitude and personality was going to sink the team. You need everybody to be synchronized on one goal, and that's winning the championship. You don't need no infighting within the team. So he had to go. You have the Sergeant of Arms, Bill Laimbeer. And his job was to mentally implement the plans. And he laid it out and made sure everybody followed the commands of Isaiah Thomas, the greatest NBA player and greatest NBA mind, basketball mind anybody has ever seen on a basketball court. I've never seen a player as smart as him and talented as him in the history of basketball. Then you have Joe Dumars, probably the best defensive two guard at 6'4" that there was. He, out of any guard in the league, had the most success against Michael Jordan. Then, the bench. This was the most depth team to ever win an NBA championship. They went 10 deep. Everybody's going to bring up Golden State Warriors, how they go 10 deep. But you just don't go 10 deep without having guidance. Proper guidance. And that's what Detroit had. You have Dennis Rodman on the bench. John Sally. Vinny the Microwave. You know, you got, man, this is Rick Mahorn. Big Rick. I mean, this team was just stacked. And you couldn't do anything to stop them. Sorry about that. I get choked up talking about the greatest team in NBA history. This team was so great that in the same year, it devised a plan on stopping Michael Jordan. In the middle of the playoffs, you have the greatest coach in NBA history in Chuck Daly. But Isaiah Thomas, Joe Dumars, and the assistant coach, Brendan, they all got together and went over strategies of stopping Michael Jordan. And Isaiah and them, after a loss in Chicago, back-to-back losses, they come up with a strategy on shutting down Michael Jordan called the Jordan Rules. And one of the most greatest adjustments ever made in a playoff series. Michael Jordan didn't understand what was happening. He didn't know how it was happening, but it was happening. The Jordan Rules had completely isolated Michael Jordan, forcing him left, getting help from the 4 and the 5th guy, and everybody knowing when to switch, running them through picks, getting them tired. So the 4th quarter, he'd be wore down. It was all cerebral. Bill Laimbeer tearing up your back line, mentally getting in the head of the best players. This was strategic. People were afraid of the Detroit Pistons. They put fear in you. And all they wanted to do is just win the game. That's why you have 3 Hall of Fame players when it really should be 4. They were the first Hall of Fame backcourt, Isaiah Thomas and Joe Dumars, in a very long time. Not since the old Boston days has there been a Hall of Fame backcourt. Until they just did it when they put Hornacek in the Hall of Fame, which was just baffles me. I like Jeff Hornacek, but come on. He was not Hall of Fame. Him and Stockton. Stockton's Hall of Fame, but no. Not Hornacek, no. So it's very hard to have a Hall of Fame backcourt. That meant something. Not the Lakers. Not the Celtics. Not the Bulls. None of these teams had a Hall of Fame backcourt. Now, you're looking at the list, and about, let me see, 2 of those teams, basically 3, out of the 5 that's on there, the other 4 teams, Detroit has played and beat those teams. They beat Larry Bird, Michael Jordan, and Magic Johnson all in the same year. And the NBA hated the fact the Detroit Pistons was as great as what they were. They tried to destroy their image, change their logo, put them in teal, all these terrible things they tried to do to destroy the legacy of the Detroit Pistons, because they did not want the Detroit Pistons representing the NBA anymore. But that 1989 team, for the first time in the history of the NBA, we saw a team will themselves to beat the odds and beat the league. And out of all these teams you've seen on this list, there have been other teams just like them. There has never been another team like the 1989 Detroit Pistons. Never.